An announcement from Ottawa of a $47.8 billion agreement over 10 years to reform First Nations child welfare programs was the highlight of last week's Assembly of First Nations annual General Assembly. However, many other topics were addressed during the Assembly, and not just by the federal Liberals. Both NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre spoke at the Assembly on Thursday. Both party leaders faced criticism from chiefs in attendance, with Mr. Singh being referred to by one chief as Justin Trudeau's buddy, and Mr. Poilievre being confronted about his priorities on Indigenous issues. I'm now joined by Jennifer Laewetz, partner at Paskwaw Harbour Strategies, to discuss her reaction to the AFN Assembly. Glad to have you here, Jennifer.
Hi.
First off, what was your initial reaction to the announcement for child welfare funding?
I was happy to hear it. There's a lot of nations across Canada right now getting involved in child welfare capacity building. So this announcement was a good thing. Little disappointed to hear that Cindy Blackstock wasn't included in the announcement, but at the end of the day, any funding for this area is needed.
And I was actually going to ask you what your thoughts on First Nations children's advocate Cindy Blackstock not being invited to the General Assembly for Children's Welfare announcement.
I was disappointed. Cindy has been, I would argue, one of the strongest people on this file in Canada, ensuring that our rights are advocated for, especially, I'm a former kid from CARE, and I think it's incredibly important that we have these people separate from our lobbyist groups like the AFN and the government to make sure that it's done correctly.
And what was the reaction to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh?
I wasn't really surprised. I knew that going into this, he's been involved with this confidence and supply deal with the Liberal government for some time now. So I really wasn't surprised that there was eventually going to be pushback. It's going to be difficult for him to enter this room and give this flowery language to elected leadership and our chiefs across the country when he talks so negatively about the Liberals, but they're right. He's the one that has the power.
And what about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre?
I thought it was interesting that there was applause during his speech. So we know that now there are chiefs that are receptive to what he's saying, but at the same time, there were also chiefs that had turned their back on him. And from what I had heard, it had to do with his parental rights stance. And some people were saying that they were disappointed that he didn't talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women, and also the trial that was happening that day for Jeremy Skibicki in Manitoba regarding the women that had been murdered. So I thought the reception was kind of right down the middle on how the elected leadership felt. But at the end of the day, I think, they're going to say what they're going to say.
And one comment you made on X was that First Nations leadership needs to stand up more to all Ottawa politicians. Can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a unique take on this entire situation. Everybody knows that I exist politically, especially at a federal level, and I have my political beliefs. But at the same time, I truly believe when you are an elected chief or in any leadership capacity on a nation, you are there to assert our autonomy and to protect it. And I have noticed that there have been political parties, like the Liberals have their Indigenous arm from their party. And it worries me a little bit when our elected officials start to get too friendly with federal politics, because really it sends a strong message also to their nation's members on where they should stand. And should we all agree with where our chief stands politically or whatever it might be? But at the end of the day, I think they're there to, again, protect our sovereignty and our autonomy, and not be too friendly with any of the political parties, but at the same time work with them.
And in your view, what should be some of the priorities in Ottawa in regards to meaningful reconciliation?
I think right now, child welfare is the biggest one. When you look at the root cause of crime, which we're seeing across the country right now, breakdown of family is one of the biggest root causes. So ensuring that we're giving nations the capacity to rebuild their child welfare and to take autonomy over it will help at the end of the day for our family structures to be rebuilt. You might not see it right away, but you'll see it down the line. And then the federal government needs to take direct action on creating a really good addiction strategy that can be utilized on nations across the country. This federal government didn't have any on reserve opioid and methamphetamine addiction strategies in their last few budgets, which is concerning because we're seeing it pour out into urban centers across the country.
And what topics were discussed during the assembly?
There were quite a few, actually. And for me, I don't know. There was a lot. There was a lot, and I am going to reserve judgment on a few of them. But at the end of the day, my concern was that the audit with AFN, it sounds like it's not going to go ahead because they had hired a separate firm or something like that. And it sounds like that resolution had passed. And now that kind of leaves it up in the air of where is that going to go? Because that was one of the number one things we heard from the last AFN chief, Chief Roseanne Archibald, is getting that financial transparency back into the AFN.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.